you have to do something. Not doing is not an option. So it was not a choice you had to make. The biggest benefit of being an entrepreneur is that you have a control over your time, yet you choose to spend it on what you're building.
Everyone goes through the part where it's tough. It's definitely tough to build. Okay, starting things from scratch, making going big is really tough. Okay, I am doing that. You're doing that. Everyone's doing that. So we know that. Okay, it looks very creamy from outside, but internally we know how much it really takes to keep going.
So entrepreneur is supposed to be jugadu, right? So jugadu not just with the business side of things, but with your own thoughts. You have to be jugadu with your own thoughts as well. Okay, my actions here can be here and there, but my intent is 100% pure. So use with discretion.
Not advisable. Have you seen recently? मैंने देखा कि you have done 3-4 podcasts एक साथ. Like I guess you did one with Shaurya and Rajan, I guess. ठीक है. And I guess अभी भानु के साथ also you did one. ठीक है.
हाँ.
How were those? What was different?
Yeah, different was the take in the context. For example, with Shaurya and Rajan, because they come from an edtech background, right? It was more educational, more formal, and like I think the entire podcast was in English. But with Bhanu, matlab, we created it with a very massy audience's perspective. So it was in Hindi. Then it was a bit of. He comes from the Instagram background. I come from LinkedIn background, and there was one more person as well. So we had a lot of conversations about different channels and media platforms. तो बहुत context बहुत different था. Of course, LinkedIn सब में common था because that is where I come from. But in terms of context, in terms of conversations around it, it was very different.
So, Acha, tell me this. I have fairly known what is your journey. I know where you come from, where have you started, what all have you done, okay? Who all you potentially work with as well, okay? But I would want you to tell us when was the time when you realized that chalo, this is my next step in the journey and I have to start doing this and potentially I'll reach something.
I think I don't have an answer to that question because I feel you never know when is that exact pivotal moment that will change the course of your life. I mean, it's always a journey. It's never a moment. So I think instead of just one moment or one interaction or one person, it's the coherence of a lot of factors in the environment that come together and fit in like pieces of a puzzle and then give you the direction. Okay, this is the way to go. So for example, when I started with my LinkedIn, then LinkedIn was not a content creation platform as what it has become today. So then nobody would have even thought that LinkedIn will have, I mean, there would be a term, quote unquote, LinkedIn influencers. Nobody thought about it that way. But today, and I think I just started it because everybody I knew in my friend circle was not on LinkedIn. So just to, just to stay away from that, oh, you're becoming a creator kind of a judgment zone, I started with LinkedIn and I didn't even write content on LinkedIn initially. I used to write a blog. So I used to treat LinkedIn as a distribution channel. So it started with a blog. Now, how blog started is a long story again. Then blogs distribution was LinkedIn. Then one of the posts got viral. So that was completely out of my control. Then one brand approached me to promote something of their own. And they were like, we'll pay you to post about it. Like, seriously? Does that happen? You will pay me to do nothing?
For a blog?
No, for a post on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So all of these promotional brand collaborations that you have.
And when was this?
This was back in January 22. A year, January 22.
About a year. Okay.
And then this happened. then a lot of founders started approaching me and asked me to manage their LinkedIn profiles. It's like, oh, opportunity, why not? And I think after that, a lot of things started, just piling up one on top of the other in a good way. And that is where I realized, okay, what is the potential here? What is the opportunity? And then I think it's always been a river. It's always flown.
Okay.
It's always I think I've always gone with the flow in that perspective.
So, Acha, tell me this, ye bata. You started by just like trying out things, exploring things. Okay, that's one side of things, and that led to, let's take you getting opportunities to work with founders, CXOs, and different people. Correct? What do you think is the, let's say, the core part of it that excites you a lot?
I think the core part of everything that I do that excites me is that I am somebody who loves to learn from people, right? You make me sit and you ask me to watch a 10-hour long course,
Okay.
I'll die of boredom. But if you make me sit and ask me to talk to somebody for 10 hours, I'll do that very happily. And and that is something that I really enjoy. So in what everything that I do, a huge part of my job just requires me to talk to people and learn from their experiences, ask them what their learnings have been and all of that, and then convert that into content. So that this gap where they're giving their insights and knowledge to me on a daily basis, I think that is something that no other job would provide, because you're talking to a founder with a 10 CR revenue and also a founder with a 100 CR top line, and both of them from the same industry, and they're giving you a peace of mind, right? They're giving you a piece of
Correct.
their mind, a piece of what they're thinking about. So you're actually just getting the chance to jump in their thought process, which I don't think any other profile, even in their corporate structure, would, demand. And
So you are
that
basically getting inside the brain of the founder to understand
exactly,
how they think, what they think.
because to write content for them, I have to pick myself up and put myself in their shoes. And I can only do that when I can think from their perspective, and I can think how they think, right? And I
Correct.
think when your thinking changes, there's nothing else that can stop you.
Hey, yes, yes. So tell me, what have you learned from being inside their head? What is it one thing or a few things that have changed in Ananya's life?
I think everything, because when you talk, for example, within the same industry, right? I am dealing with somebody who's just starting out, like who's I think who's been doing business for the last 2-3 years only. I'm also talking to somebody who's been in the industry for the last 20 years.
Okay.
So how they think about the same things, that is very different. Yet they're very complementing to each other because they enjoy the taste of entrepreneurship. So one thing that I've really realized and learned
Do they know
is
each other?
that no, I
Okay.
think they would, because they come from the same industry, but I don't know, never talk to each other
Correct.
about each other. Um, I think one thing that would come here is that every business is a people's business. If you know the right person and you can tap that right person at the right time, an activity that would have taken you, let's say, 10 days to get done, you could do it in 10 minutes. So
Okay.
everything, it's just all the entire startup ecosystem is all about knowing the right person. So, and
Tapping.
that is exactly because if you want to get listed at a marketplace, you need to know the right guy. If you want to raise funds, you need to know the right investor. If you want to acquire clients, you need to know the right customer. So I think if you want to grow your company, you need to know the right, employee. So it's always about how you interact with people and how well relationships are made in your life. So I think that is one thing common that I've observed with all the people. And yeah, I think that's something that personally worked for me as well.
I'll ask you one more thing, okay? In my last few podcasts, we have spoken about how relationships are built by networking. Okay. And everyone has a very different perspective. Something it's like the fractional relationship में होना चाहिए. It's more like कि you have to be just out there and give, okay, and it should not be like a transactional business. Okay, some believe it takes time to build it because you have to be more communicative. Okay, what do you think is your take on building relationships through networking?
I think the best way to network is to be like water. Matlab, water is something, no matter in which container you put, in which temperature, it'll always have a solid purpose or a use case, right? Water at a cold temperature becomes ice, which you can use. Water at a warm temperature is good for health. Water at a normal temperature is something that you obviously use. Water can be used in mocktails, cocktails. Water can be used basically anywhere. And, you put a water in a bucket, it'll take that shape. You put water in a glass, it'll take that shape, right? So I think when you go out to network, you need to know what purpose you're solving, right? Is your purpose to network, uh, maybe get a client, or is it to just build a long-term network for future, or is it to just tap into somebody else, right? Or is it just because you want to explore? So having that purpose clarity in your head is very important because that will decide your next course of action. Because I agree that one of the best ways to build long-term relationships is to give, right? But you can't give everything to everybody because you also have limited resources. So you need to pick the right person to, have that aura around with, to be always accessible. But then if you're always accessible to everybody, people will start walking over you. So you need to know where to draw the line as well. So I think the best example to understand networking is to compare it with water, right? Water, when you put it in a cold temperature, it becomes ice. Then ice you can't fit in all containers, right? Then you have to find the
Correct.
appropriate container for that cube of ice, right? So you have
Correct.
to decide which form and which state um, is your go-to. You need to decide which form or which state is the appropriate one for a particular interaction, and then take the future course of action. Right.
When you started with the water thing, initially मेरे को लगा you were talking about तू beer है. You know that whole segment, तू beer है. Beer fits in a glass, beer fits in a cup. It's from one of the TVF series.
Oh,
Um,
never watched it yet.
Startups related.
No idea.
हाँ,
I think I'll be the last
pictures,
person who
pictures.
would know about all of these series and shows and all of that. I've watched only a handful of them, that too because of a lot of peer pressure.
ठीक है. Okay. So coming to this, I'll talk about the LinkedIn part of yours a little. Let's say you started quite early. Okay, you are currently, let's say, abhi recently you also won like the LinkedIn Creator of the Year, things like that as well. Okay, what do you think is one of the, let's say, worst things that you see on LinkedIn? The things that you think are irrelevant and reduces the value of the platform.
I think LinkedIn is very different from all other platforms. We first need to understand why, right? Because let's say after a long day at work, when you're bored, you'll open Instagram, right? At least I, as a user, will, right? When I want to learn something very, very specific, I'll open YouTube and search for it, right? When I want to know about where my family and all my rishtedar are, I'll open Facebook and check their profiles, right? When will I open LinkedIn? When I feel like I have some professional or some business interest to explore. Only then I'll open LinkedIn. I'll not open LinkedIn because I'm bored, right? And that is something that most of the users out there also do. So you need to understand that everybody who's coming on LinkedIn is coming with a very strong business intent. They have a very strong working intention with everybody that they see. So your content has to serve that purpose as well. Otherwise, it's as useless as people dancing. on, a random TikTok reel without any kind of content per se. So, with that, I think everything that you're talking about needs to be backed up by your experience. And it needs to be backed up by where you're coming from and what you have an authority to speak about. For example, I saw this first year student on LinkedIn talking about how to get the best placement,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And I think that's completely absurd, right? First year, you don't even know how to get into the best society. You're talking about grabbing the best placement. How would you know that? And even if that content piece went viral, when I'll go to that person's profile, I'll realize the entire scenario. And I'll, of course, look at the bigger picture that that person has either copied the content or used ChatGPT or other AI tools for it. So
To make
then,
it.
even if I wanted to do some kind of network or build some kind of network or do some work with that person, my intent will immediately disappear because I'll
Okay.
understand that entire, the negative scenario that is being created here. So that way, even if that person got lots of likes and engagement and all of that, the real opportunity that he could have received from the platform, that will disappear,
Correct. Correct.
right? Because nobody would want to work with someone who speaks things out of thin air, right? Without any kind of logical backing. So I think that is one of the biggest mistakes you can make on the platform, because then you limit yourself in exploiting the gold mine opportunities that it has.
So, Dick, I'll tell you what. There was this one person who really asked me when I got top voice for entrepreneurship. Okay. There was this one person who asked me, "How did you get it?" Technically, I know it's quite simple to get it. Okay. I can tell you the exact steps how to get it as well. Not a big deal. Okay. But she mentioned she asked a very good question, and it's a her. She's like a girl. Like, so she asked, is it easier for women to post, let's take any piece of content with an image of, let's take themselves and get more virality and reach?
If you think about it, I think I don't know about other platforms, but I think on LinkedIn, even if you do that, or even if it solves whatever engagement purpose, if right, I don't think it solves the real intent. Because again, I'm repeating the word intent again and again because that's what LinkedIn is all about, right? If you also use LinkedIn, you use it with this very specific mindset that, I want to connect with this X category of people and I want to build that network and I want to maybe, strengthen some kind of business or professional opportunity around me. Now, if somebody does that, you are not stupid, I am not stupid, and 10,000 other people using the platform with real power are not stupid, right? And that is where, even if that person would have X number of followers or X number of likes or comments or whatever, they'll never be able to extract something out of it because it won't help them. So
Okay.
there are a lot of people, maybe, let's say having similar follower base as me, or, maybe more, maybe less. But I've seen people, irrespective of the number of followers and engagement, build such a strong network and extract so much from the platform just because what they're talking about connects with so many people and it brings a layer of authenticity. So I think if somebody does that, kudos that you're getting a lot of likes and engagement, but ultimately it's not translating into something meaningful. So it's your choice. Do you want maybe 1 lakh followers or do you want 1 lakh in cash? That's what it's all about.
Okay. Talking about, let's take whole thing that we spoke about, virality, picture posting, ये वाला पूरा part. What do you think is the most darkest side of LinkedIn? Is it like what do you think is the darkest side? Because I somewhere have a different perspective to it. You being, let's take one of the most, let's say, influential people on LinkedIn. What is your thought on that?
I think the dark side of LinkedIn is that Let me think about it. I've never really thought about the dark sides. We've always spoken about the good stuff. Um, but I think not just LinkedIn. If I were to say it from my perspective, very, very honestly and candidly, I'd say not just LinkedIn, but like all the social media platforms. One dark side of it is that consistency is very important, right? And sometimes, as somebody who's creating the content, just because you get stuck in that loop of consistency that always sits on your head, and sometimes when you're not in the mood to write, you'll not write it, right? I mean, a lot of people will force it. Even if you're not forcing it, there's this one thought always at the back of your head, yeah, what if when I come back, my all my efforts go down the drain, right? So that I think that thought that never leaves you is something that puts a lot of mental pressure. So, for example, right, whenever I don't feel like talking about something or I don't have a very strong idea or opinion about something, I'll not post. So, I've not posted, I think, more than 4-5 posts in the entire last 1 month. Although a lot has been happening on my personal and professional side. So, I've not posted. But I still feel there's always a thought at the back of my head, okay, you need to post something. And then, it keeps on going in loop. And simultaneously, just to extend that, it's like there's never an end to this cycle. Like, there's just no stopping to it. I mean,
Okay.
once you're at zero, you're at 1,000, okay, 10,000, okay, 1 lakh, okay, 10 lakh, okay, 1 probably 100 lakh, yeah, probably more. So there's no end to it. You never know when to stop.
Correct.
And that is something that'll always keep you consumed.
Consumed. Yes. Yes.
And the more you grow, the satisfaction becomes lesser. So how? I'll tell you, right? Um, Earlier, when let's say I was at 5,000 followers, right? When you go from 5,000 to 6,000, that's also a level of celebration, right? Because that absolute number of increase of 1,000, that's huge.
Correct. Yes.
But now, when I went from 1 lakh to 1 lakh 1,000 within a day or so, but it didn't give me that level of satisfaction because now that you've achieved 1 lakh, the ideal probably the next celebration is 1 lakh 50,000.
Or two.
The next milestone. Or 2 lakhs, right? So I think the more you grow, instead of things getting prettier, the satisfaction will start to drop. Because the game in absolute numbers would change.
Expectations change हो जाते हैं.
And it will never end.
Exactly.
There is no end to it.
There is no end to it.
So, I mean, even when you're working, you have a hard stop. Let's say, okay, at 60, I'll retire, right? Or maybe as a founder or as an entrepreneur, you're like, okay, my business is this, and maybe I'll scale it up to 100 CR, I'll scale it up to a unicorn or something. But there's sort of a mental hard stop. Okay, ye ho gaya, that means you've done something, right? But when it comes to this follower number, there's never a hard stop. You'll say, okay, I'll reach 1 million and I'll stop. You'll not be able to. Because then everybody in your circle will be at 1 million. So that kind of anxiety and that level of, going in loops and the entire circle feeling like a whirlpool, that is something that's crazy. And that is something that I think keeps a lot of people awake at night. So if I were to say like there's a dark side to it, I'd say it's that.
Like, we spoke about a part where you're saying you get anxious. The growth of it, people are getting more anxious. Correct? What do you think are the ways that people can use to reduce the amount of anxiousness, stress?
I think I might not be the right person to do that because I'm still myself figuring that out. Because I think, yes, 1 lakh is a milestone, but there's still a lot more to do, right? There's still a lot more there. But I feel that one way that I'm personally trying to not be consumed in that loop is by making sure that I keep on going back and keep reading my old posts so that I myself realize that, okay, how far is it that I've come? Right? When I go back, maybe it takes me 10-15 minutes to scroll. And when I see that one of those very initial few posts where it was like 3 like, 4 like, 10 like, I think that is what gives me the satisfaction then. So the satisfaction now doesn't come from 1 lakh to 1 lakh 1,000, but you have to scroll down and see the entire growth journey that you've taken. That, and plus, I think I talked to somebody who is sort of dealing with a similar thing, but at let's say a lesser level. So somebody who's dealing it with from 10,000 to 20,000, right? So I go and I talk to that person, and when I'm talking to them, of course, they'll come up with the same problems that I'm feeling. And because I feel like, okay, I'm maybe like a guide to them, or I've been there and I've done that, I'll try to say and I'll try to tell them all the things that I want to tell myself. And because I'm speaking that, I'll subconsciously hear it and be okay with it. So I think when you go out to help other, you sort of end up helping yourself as well.
You're at a place where you're already working with, let's take a few very well-known people. That's one. Okay. Your let's say professional circle or your friend circle possibly is also where everyone is doing something or the other at a very good level. Okay. Do you think everyone goes through? See, I somewhere feel everyone goes through the part where it's tough. It's definitely tough to build. Okay. Starting things from scratch, making like going big is really tough. Okay. I am doing that. You're doing that. Everyone's doing that. So we know that. Okay. It looks very creamy from outside, but internally we know how much it really takes to keep going. Okay. Have you ever felt such, let's say, situations where तेरे को लगा कि नहीं, I just have like it's just like you just wanted to give up. You just want to leave things. You feel like nothing is working out. Okay. And if you felt those things, okay, I somewhere feel that you might have. Okay. And if you had, what were the ways that you came out of it?
I think for any entrepreneur who's starting out in the very initial phases of the journey, this happens 15 times a day. So it's like after, because you everything in your company is always on fire. You feel like, so there are days when I feel like I'm a fire extinguisher, right?
Right.
Somebody messed up somewhere, there's a fire, you need to go, you need to sort it out. By the time you sort it out, something else is on fire. So just running like here and there with feeling like a bag full of carbon dioxide and just like putting out fire. So I think, and then every time you realize, yeah, why did I get into this? Why did I have to do it? Corporate is fine, man. You're getting everything. You're getting a salary at the end of the month. You're getting there's a growth trajectory right in front of you, that first you're an analyst, then you become an associate, then you become a director, a VP, then a partner, whatever. So you know where you're going. You don't have
Correct.
to carve it out for yourself. But as an entrepreneur, I don't know where I'll be tomorrow, right? Probably a
Correct.
year down the line, I can be absolutely zero, or I can be absolutely, entrepreneur of the year. So that level of uncertainty is something that freaks you out every single day. And within that day, when you have 10 different crisis situations, at 10 different times you feel like, why did I do it? But then I think one way to cope up with that is, A, because it's happening so frequently, you get used to it. So not the healthiest way probably, but like you get used to it. Because you feel like giving up 3 times a day, then when you're going, when you're sleeping at night, you feel like, okay, I did something good. So then that feeling of things going wrong will go away. And I think second thing about it is that um, when you're in that circle, you talk to a lot of people, you feel like you're not alone.
You're
Everybody
not
is
alone.
going through the same mess. Everybody is struggling. The journey that you have, 10 other people in your circle will relate to it. And when everybody relate to it, you'll also end up normalizing it for yourself. So I think that is something that has actually helped me take care of it. And I don't think yes, thoughts of giving up are always there, but I don't think it's an option anymore. So it's like when you're around people, you realize and you talk to them, you realize that every single person is going through a similar trajectory. So it's not just you, right? And then you
Correct.
feel like, okay, if they can make it through it, why can't you? Because one thing that entrepreneurs I've observed are built off is very extreme emotions, right? In terms of either they're super optimistic कि 10 लोग फेल हो गए मैं नहीं हूँ, and then they end up building something super big, right? Or they're super realistic, so then you feel like okay, अगर 10 लोग feel कर रहे हैं, मैं feel कर रहा हूँ तो normal है, so doesn't matter.
Correct.
So you find a way out. So entrepreneur is supposed to be jugadu, right? So jugadu not just with the business side of things, but with your own thoughts. You have to be jugadu with your own thoughts as well.
I'll tell you this. So recently, someone told me that you know Aman, right? Aman Gupta boat, correct? So it's a story from when he was, I guess, married after his marriage, but boat was not that big then. Okay, so it was basically like his mother-in-law used to ask him, "अच्छा क्या कर रहा है आजकल?" Okay, and he used to say, "हाँ काम चल रहा है," you know, things like similar, like an entrepreneur. And after these many years, now that you know boat is so big, okay, wherever she goes, she says, "मेरा क्या बोलते हैं ना, दामाद is boat का owner," you know, things like that. So that whole transition phase is only because of that unrealistic optimism that entrepreneurs have.
Absolutely. So I think I read a stat somewhere that only 1% of the startup succeed, right? So anybody who's realistic, उसकी ये नंबर देख के फट जाएगी यार, वो करेगा ही नहीं, उसकी हिम्मत नहीं होगी, right?
Correct. Correct.
Secondly, it's very easy to say that, you know, that quote that a lot of entrepreneurs talk about, that you can fail n number of times, but you only need to succeed once.
You just that
But
one hit.
believing in that takes so much of courage and so much of craziness.
Correct.
Because failing is not easy.
Failing is not easy. Yes.
It's not easy. And it takes a lot of overconfidence and courage to deal with failure and to rise back after it. So
When
I
was the
think,
last time you cried?
oh, I cried. Like cried and proper cried. Okay, why am I rhyming? But I think that keeps happening on a weekly basis. So it's like a rant session that I do with myself. So
No,
that
no.
is what my Sunday afternoons are for.
Being that realistically optimistic, unrealistically optimistic, takes courage. It takes like a
Yeah.
lot of courage. It takes like a lot of strength from inside, and many times we just lose our emotions. Okay, and it's okay to cry. It's very okay to cry, which people sometimes think it's not. So that's why I asked, when was the last time you cried?
Yeah, I think I do it on a very regular basis because I feel I am also somebody with a lot of extreme emotions. So when I'm excited, I'm like super excited. When I'm, when I'm in the work mode, I'm in super work mode. Like I'll work for 15 hours straight without even caring about food. So when
Okay.
I'm sad, that also is in extremes, right? So then those will be days when I'll shut everything down and I'll just crawl back into a blanket and watch a TV show and whatever and just sit there. So then I don't want anybody interfering with my life. So, but then that is something that I've seen that is worked for myself. Like that is how I balance my emotions. And it can be very different for a lot of different people. Some people might just not like feeling a certain way.
Correct.
And sometimes I like feeling sad also, because when I'm not feeling sad, I feel like, okay, then why will I feel happy? Because the highs and lows. So there's this song, right? Let Her Go. So I think it draws a lot of analogies like this, that you only need the sun when it's burning low or something like
Correct.
that. So you only realize the importance of happiness or the level of happiness when you were actually feeling sad. And that is something I've observed, that if I'm sad on Monday, I'll feel the happiest on Tuesdays, because the marginal increase would be crazy. So
Okay.
it's like,
Okay.
so I don't know why I'm bringing economics into it, but I feel that okay, when there is nothing to be sad about, I'll find a reason and be sad about it so that I can feel happy tomorrow.
Wow, nee, this is a different perspective. I guess it is same to what we were speaking before the call around. You were making smileys. We are looking
Yeah.
for what we don't have, right?
Yeah, I mean, because I feel so because I come from a commerce background, right? I think about a lot of things when it in terms of economics. So I'm like
Okay.
marginal utility मेरे को happiness का कहाँ से मिलेगा?
What? Okay. हाँ, वो तो है. हाँ.
And that is exactly why if I'm not feeling sad, I'll watch a sad movie, I'll just do something and force myself to be sad. I mean, not the best and the healthiest advice to people who are listening to this, but yeah.
Okay. See, I think we are misleading people to a very good solution.
I
ठीक है?
mean, right, again, just like what I said at the start of the podcast, that okay, my actions here can be here and there, but my intent is 100% pure.
हाँ.
So use with discretion.
Not advisable.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to give like a disclaimer at the start that whatever you're hearing, hear it at your own
Own risk.
own risk, and don't try this at home. Do it
Don't
under guidance.
homeschooler. मेरे को बचपन
Yeah,
के YouTube वीडियोस याद आ गए. उसमें आता था disclaimer. Don't try this at home school.
I have खतरों की खिलाड़ी in my head right now.
Okay.
You get a disclaimer after you perform every stunt, right?
हाँ 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 हाँ. मेरे को
Yeah, so
double
this is an emotional stunt that I do with myself.
think I'll ask you. This is a very good point because Acha, see this. I think most of us come from, let's say, middle class or upper middle class backgrounds where everyone of us has to do that hustle to grow. Okay.
Correct.
कि करना है कुछ life में. Okay, that is always there. What was that, let's say, mindset that Ananya had, let's say, कि यार नहीं कुछ life में करना तो है, okay, and कुछ करके दिखाना है. So what was that zone, that path in life? I guess वो अभी भी चलता होगा on a daily basis. But how do you keep yourself on track with that, and what do you see it yourself?
I think that mindset was कि कोई और mindset का option ही नहीं है. So it's like you have to do something. Not doing is not an option. So it was not a choice you had to make.
It was not a choice.
It was not a choice. It's never a choice for people who are struggling to survive, people who are struggling to get a decent lifestyle. And I think that is what has made a lot of, made from scratch stories. Because most of the people you go and ask them what made you do it, they'll say, I had no other option. And because when you have options, then you'll choose the safer and the more convenient one. Right?
Correct.
And it's like hustling and struggling to build something. It's not easy. And it's not convenient. It's not comfortable. So when you can choose comfort, why won't you? Right? Our parents have worked hard so that we can be comfortable. We are working
Correct.
hard so that probably the next generation can be more comfortable. Would you want your kids to struggle the way you did? No.
No, right.
Right? But if they have to, then it will not be an option for them. Then probably, 5 years or 10 years in their journey, nobody will come back and ask them, why did you do it? Bloody, I had no other option but to do it. So I think that is what keeps you going. And once you get into that habit of doing things on your own, it's very addictive. You just get very, that becomes your comfort zone then. Because then not doing anything will lie out of your comfort zone. And that is when people will come and ask you, how do you work 12 hours a day? Then you'll reply, on a Sunday, I don't know what to do. So I work on a Sunday also. So
work on a Sunday. Every day is the same day.
Yeah.
There is no weekend. There is no Monday. Every day is the same day.
You don't need a weekend, man. I mean, it's like, as an entrepreneur, I know we talk a lot about work-life balance and all of that, but I don't think you need a Sunday to create your work-life balance.
You don't.
It's like if you love, I wouldn't say love, because you can't love everything endlessly, right? That is why you have fight with your partners as well. So you can't love everybody at all times or everything. Um, but I feel that the biggest benefit of being an entrepreneur is that you have a control over your time, yet you choose to spend it on what you're building. So
Correct.
I, as a person, have always worked on things that can give me the power to choose. So I don't care about money. I don't care about anything else. What I care about is having that power to choose. That if I'm doing something wrong, it's because I chose to do it.
It's as simple as regret nahi rahega baad mein.
So it's like if I was, let's say, in a job, and then let's say somebody asked me to work on a Sunday, then I don't have the power to choose. Now I probably work twice as hard, but I'm equally satisfied, or probably more, right? Because I am choosing to work on a weekend. So for me personally, that power of choice is very empowering. It's very satisfying. So that's where I think I draw this entire energy from, and that is where I don't mind working.
ठीक है, okay. Do you think entrepreneurs need, let's take, therapy?
I think depends, right? They're just asking if humans need help. Like, of course they do, but you don't know to what extent, right?
Right.
So it's like, did of course all humans would try to help themselves as much as possible, and you'd want them to do it that way, right? But if they're not able to help themselves, then of course you need people to jump in and pull them. So I think that's the
Correct.
same case here, because as entrepreneurs, like any other profession, there's own set of challenges, their own set of commitments, there's own set of satisfactions that you derive. So if somebody can handle it, which a lot of people have, I don't think saying that entrepreneurs need or do not need therapy would be the right way to go about it, because it's a very blanket statement. Technically, then at
Correct.
one point or the other, everybody needs therapy, right? So I think that's something that, yes, we need to talk a bit more about, because a lot of entrepreneurs go through a lot of mental setbacks, and there's a lot of
Correct.
failing than succeeding. So there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of pressure. But that being said, if they're open to if they can deal with it on their own, nothing better. If not, then of course, right? Why not?
Why not? Okay, so we'll just do some specific to what Ananya does. I think everyone must have asked you this very often. Okay, and we'll ask, simplest way. Tell me 3 steps. In 3 steps, how should someone use LinkedIn in the best way possible? 3 steps, 3 things.
I think first understand why. Why do you want to use it? Do you want to use it to connect with random people around, like people from your community? Do you want to use it to connect with people from another community? Do you want to use it to get clients? Do you want to use it to run a business? Do you want to use it to get investors for your business? Do you want to use it to make friends? You need to first understand why, and then create a strategy around it, right?
Okay.
Second thing I would say, that always think outside the box. Now, I don't mean it in a very, creative, fancy sense. What I mean is that right now I myself have around 15,000 pending connection requests, right? So if you send me a connection request, what is it that will make me connect to you and not the other 14,999 people?
Okay.
So be creative in what value you can offer. For instance, I'll give you another example. One person I know wanted to connect with a D2C founder, right? A lot of people tried connecting with him. He's not very responsive, because of course you get thousands of requests every single day, and it's very hard for you as a founder to take out time to reply to people, right? So what he did was, he bought a few of the company's products, distributed those products amongst his friends, and asked all of his friends to drop the company an Amazon review. and then took screenshots of those reviews and sent it to the founder. So now think about it. If a founder will not reply to a person like that, what else will a founder do?
Correct.
So you need to be creative in how you approach people, because every approachable
Correct.
person is already being approached by many. So what is it that will differentiate
Yes.
you? And that is where you need to find a creative way to do it, right? And thirdly, I think never be afraid to talk about what you know, but don't talk a lot about what you don't know, right? Because unlike a lot of other platforms, LinkedIn gives other people the access to go and check your entire professional history. And if what you're saying does not match with where you're coming from, it creates an immediate turn off. And you lose an opportunity even before it knocks on your door. So I think keeping
Correct.
these things in mind, and then a lot of you'll find your way through it, but it's very important to um to just be there and give it time, because things won't happen overnight. A lot of people, just because something is trending and they see 10 other posts getting viral about something, they'll force themselves to talk about it. Yes, you do. It might get viral, but it will not solve your purpose which you figured out in the first step. So I think staying finding that why and staying true to it is very important.
Okay, so that's very important. But importance of understanding what you actually want is the simplest basic step that everyone needs, not only on LinkedIn but in life as well. Okay? You don't even know what you need to do. It's like you just not there at all. Okay, and you have to figure out that particular.
I think when we talk about the bigger life in general, one philosophy that I've always followed is that I never knew what, or I never tried to find out what I want to do. I always try to find out what I didn't want to do. And I keep,
Right.
crossing that out of my list. So
Correct.
let's say when I was deciding, okay, what are the things that, what potential career options that I want to choose. So I did X, I did HR, didn't like it, cross, right? I did X profile, didn't like it, cross. Now, then there were like a few other profiles left. So I did M&A, liked it up to a certain level, didn't like it. Okay, maybe a wavy dotted line, right? Then, but let's say I've never done paragliding. I've never thought of myself as a person who can train, be a trainer there. So how can I cross something that I don't know yet, right?
Right.
How can I be fixated on a career when I've not explored even 1% of it, right?
Correct.
So that is why my entire philosophy of things in the bigger picture has always been find out what you don't want to do, because that will automatically lead you to what you can do, should do, and might want to do.
Correct. Correct. Do not limit yourself.
Yeah, I mean, people come in, they're like, okay, I want to do marketing. Why? Because I don't like finance. Okay, so
Eh?
what? Sales, HR, right?
Exactly.
Probably you want to be a tourist guide. Probably you want to be an Ola driver. I mean, trust me, I talk to so many, whenever I'm traveling in an Ola and Uber, I know so many people who come from very, very affluent background. Like people
Okay.
who've done engineering from the top institutes. They're still driving in Ola because it gives them more flexibility on their time. I mean, and they've given up on multiple income jobs to choose that. So till the time you've not done it, how can you disregard it?
That story is for next podcast. Like, who is the person from an affluent background who was a truck driver?
Yeah, lots of people. So whenever anybody is listening to the podcast, whenever you sit in an Uber or Ola or any other cab next time, just try talking to your driver, and the level of knowledge that these people have. and the background. It's crazy.
It's crazy, yes. Yes. I've heard that. Yesterday, I guess there was this one person who was in a Ola cab. He found out that the driver, I guess, was the chief growth officer of JustPay.
Yeah, I mean, so I have had so many instances where this particular ex-driver had worked on one of the dream roles that I had or something like that. And when you talk to them and you ask, why did you leave it? The story that they have is so refreshing that, these are the people who should be on LinkedIn and talking about it.
Okay. But yeah. So, Ananya, coming to the last part of it. Today we have spoken about lots of things. Like, spoke about you starting working with, bigger CEOs, then what are the good sides of LinkedIn? Even we spoke about the dark side of it. Okay. We also spoke about, creators, if they need therapy or not, how they feel, what is the mindset. And then we again circled back to the part where what are the three ways to just start with LinkedIn. Okay. I'll ask you just one simple thing. Okay. And this is something which we do with all of our guests. Okay. And you have to fill in the blanks. Okay. Simple fill in the blanks question. Okay. If you were to inspire someone, okay, and or let's say your younger version or anyone, if you were to motivate them and inspire them by saying this one line, okay, have a Laksh to do this, okay, what would that be?
Have a Laksh to understand that happiness is a skill. You can learn it.
Why that?
Because I think I read this some report somewhere. They say that, and this is something I've tried and tested, right? So even when you're feeling sad, if you force yourself to smile, you'll end up smiling after a while. So, and we often associate our happiness or our satisfaction with a lot of tangible things in the market that we don't understand that even when we get them, there will always be something more to get. Again, it's like an endless loop. You move from a 1 BHK to a 2 BHK to a 3 BHK to a bungalow to maybe a luxury apartment. There's no end to it. Then once you have one apartment, you'd want three more. Once you have three more, you'd want a beachside house. Once you have a beachside house, you'd want a vacation home. So there's no end to it. And that is why understanding that people who are maybe at the top of the pyramid, a lot of them are still not happy. And you wanting to reach that pyramid to be happy is not the way to go about it. So that is why I feel like happiness is a skill. And I don't know the science of it, to be very honest. But I think when you start believing it or when you start thinking of it that way, you can force yourself to be happy. Not in a negative sense per se, but you
But in
can
a good,
you can force yourself to not be attracted by things or associate your happiness with something outside. So I
correct.
think that's something that I have really grown to appreciate in my life.
It is basically like have a Laksh too. Your one line was,
Have have a Laksh to be happy without seeking it.
Anya, it was an amazing conversation. I somewhere feel we have great conversations. Like when we met in Bangalore as well, and currently as well, and over the phone as well many times. I feel the conversations are very different than what I usually have with a lot of people in our circle. Okay, because somewhere it's like possibly coming. I don't know what is the main reason. Okay, but coming from a similar background, somewhere I feel it really makes sense where our conversations are really amazing. I love, let's take knowing your ideas around what Ananya thinks, okay, how she basically wants to go ahead, okay, pursue her future, and let's take what changes have these thought processes, mindsets brought in her life. So I have learned a lot today. Okay, do you have something to say before we end the podcast? And we'll just end up.
I think this entire journey of not just recording this one podcast, but speaking with you about 10 different things has been so fulfilling in a different, layer of understanding, because we come from very different areas, yet we feel very similarly about a lot of things. And I think that is true with a lot of people out there. So before we end this and before we conclude this episode of your podcast series, I think one thing that we need to tell people out there is that, I mean, keep everything aside, you just have one life. So just to live that one day, don't die for the other smaller days. I mean, we always, have this flag at the top of the, the hill or the mountain. But to reach there, because that victory will only last a few seconds or a few minutes or a few hours or a few days. But what you're giving in right now is something that probably 10 years later you look back on. Right.
Correct.
So it's like a lot of decisions in my life that I take is, after 5 years, will this matter? If yes, how much? And because this is something we've all done in school, is what I feel, right? We've taken so many things so seriously, which we don't even remember now. Right? We've taken that stupid exam so seriously and slept, been so stressed about it, been so anxious. I don't think we would even remember those marks anymore.
Correct.
And whatever we want to achieve probably in the next year, 5 years later, we'll feel the same thing about that. So
Correct.
I think understanding that, and then that is how, saying live in the present is very easy. It's easier said than done. But once you start looking at things from that perspective, at least my thought process changed. And it has actually had a huge impact on how stressed I get about things. Because I know half of the things I'm getting stressed about today won't matter. So
Tomorrow.
I don't get stressed about it anymore. So I think understanding that is very important.